Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. And this is a legacy video for those that still have this amazing Korg D3200 DAW workstation. If you're watching this video in 2023, kudos to you. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting the channel. This is actually a little bit of a personal and sentimental video for me because the very first video that I ever did on YouTube, if you look back, was actually pertaining to a repair on a D3200 that I had at the time for a friend. And when we fixed that, he also went and got the VGA adapter known as the 2Seemy, which came out, I want to say 2010 in thereabouts, to allow you to see what was going on in the unit. You had this little itsy tiny screen, black and white, and it just was not easy on the eyes, and I don't have the best eyes in the world. They came up with a homebrewed VGA adapter, which is right here. This is the most refined version, and by a gentleman by the name of Wilfrid. I do apologize, Wilfrid, I won't be able to pronounce your last name correctly, but Wilfrid and his daughter for years were making these VGA adapters to help people that were still using these units to be able to see the output on the screen on a larger screen. And that's what I've had here. I'll take off the dust cover here once we get it installed, but that's what we're going to do in today's video. I also want to give a big shout out to all the Studio Tracks forum members. I'm sure that if you do a search that you're going to find a lot of information on this. The Studio Tracks forum shut down many years ago, but a lot of the members still exist and are active today in the Facebook group. I'll link to that down below in the description. And I'm making this video mostly for those guys and also for Sébastien, who took over for Wilfrid and his daughter. They're making the 2Seemy for a limited time because there are still people like myself that use these units, and I'm going to go through on how to install it for those that are not familiar with it, and we will then check it out, make sure everything works properly, and I'm going to set you up a little better with some light on a tripod, and we're going to get this done. Now, the interesting thing with this unit is that they still have value. On Reverb, they're still selling for a decent amount of money. Brand new, they cost about $12.99 US back in, like, say, 2005, 2006 time frame. And today, you could still get these for anywhere from $250 to $400 if it doesn't have the 2Seemy adapter. If you do have the 2Seemy adapter, then these can easily go for anywhere from $500 to $600 depending on the condition. And a lot of people still seem to be using them. There are a lot of options out there these days. You got your Pro Tools, you got your software, your different interfaces and whatnot. But this was how things were done back when home recording was just starting out to become more available to the populace. This is a standalone unit completely. You can create your own, you could burn CDs right here in the unit. It has an internal hard drive. The initial run came out with 40 gigabyte hard drives. Parallel ATA, I believe, and this one is a 40 gigabyte. My first unit has 80 gigabytes. It was a later production model, and you had all the built-in effects, phantom power. This can do 12 channels at once, 14 channels at once with reduced resolution. If you had the SPDIF in the back going to another input interface, but the fact that it had that much power as a standalone, this really made things for home recording. I've actually done and recorded entire bands with this unit back in the day. Here's the unit, and this is the most refined version of it. It's very clean. It's basically, this is all that it is. The red, they give you a red VGA, like a little red ribbon cable. One of them goes here, and then the other one goes out to the little monitor that's hooked up to it. So it's basically running in parallel. And not only will that display work, but then the VGA will work to the larger monitor. At one point here, just so you guys, for a history lesson, these little solder pads used to be for a PS2 mouse port. And my first unit that I have is actually got that PS2 port on it. But it was never implemented because at the time Wilfrid was trying, and along with a couple developers, trying to make an external mouse work along with this click track mouse device, because eventually this would wear out. But we were not able to get it going. There was one developer, it came out years ago, and I just can't find the video for the life of me, but at the time He did show that it worked. He was able to move his mouse with a lot of this mess of wires, but there was some significant soldering of wires to the main PCB in order for it to work. And the cursor didn't really move too well because the digital signals that the PS2 mouse works on, whether it's a trackball or whether it's a laser, the modern laser version, infrared, to the analog signals of what this is doing. This is basically just a large potentiometer that moves back and forth. The translation between those signals, that's really where the main bulk of the coding needed to be worked on. And because of the difficult implementation for the mouse, it was abandoned. But maybe someday, if anyone got the initiative to do that, I doubt it for something of this age and vintage. However, it was worked on at one point. But quick history lesson on that. So let's get to the installation. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the unit. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 machine screws here. We have 1, 2, and 3 underneath here. I'll show that to you in a moment. Once I get you set up on the tripod, you got 1, 2, and 3 to remove these wooden side rails on each side. And then once you do that, then the whole control surface lifts up. Be careful when you do that because the ribbon cables that connect the PCB of the main surface board here that go down to the bottom are not forgiving when it comes to length. If you open this up too much, you will cause those ribbon cables to stretch, possibly break, or have an intermittent connection, and then you're in trouble. So we don't want to do that. I'm going to get you set up on the tripod. Let's remove these screws and we can go from there. Here we are on the inside of the unit, and words of caution, when you open it up like this, you can do it. It's going to be hinged on the back, and then you'd have to lift the whole control surface off. But these ribbon cables, there's 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, and 4. This 4th one is what we're going to be concerned with. This is to the small screen here. We're going to be installing the 2Seemy right through these air vents here. You cannot open it up to 90 degrees like this without disconnecting them. Just be extremely, extremely careful with these ribbon cables. If you mess them up, then you're going to be in trouble. But this is really the biggest risk. Once you get these ribbon cables disassembled away from the bottom boards here, I'm going to take this control surface, move it completely out of the way, and then we can work on getting this 2Seemy installed through the main vents here. And I also misspoke. Turns out this does have an 80 gigabyte hard drive. This uses a parallel ATA hard drive. I think the original was a Seagate, and that's the information here, just for those that are interested. I have heard of people able to get, I think it's a Western Digital 320 gigabyte hard drive in here with an 8 gigabyte USB partition installed in here. And if you needed that much storage, great. I've never needed more than 80 gigs because I usually buffer it back to the computer anyway and put it on another external hard drive that's larger. But just for informational purposes, if you ever were to go and change out the hard drive, again, this is the most dangerous and sensitive part of that type of upgrade, is that this ribbon cable, if you're not careful, you can easily damage these ribbon cables. So just be aware. All right, we got you set up here. Now, the 2Seemy is going to be, let me see if I can see with the camera here, so that it's going to be pressed together like so, right, with some plastic nuts. We want to take those off and carefully separate the pieces. All right, this goes aside for just a moment. This piece here is going to be oriented going through these vents. Now, the connectors here are going to be on the right. This is the back of the unit, so if you're looking at it from the front, these connectors are going to be on the right side, and these mounting screws are going to go through the vents here. Now, what you can do, and I'm just going to look past the camera as I do this, that's how it should go. Now, it's important that when you orient it, all these push pins are not touching the chassis of the D3200, otherwise it'll just short out. This is a very well designed PCB, so I don't think you're going to run into that problem. Again, you just do your best to be able to orient it. And then what we're going to then get from the kit, so I just want to show you that. is that it comes with these, oh, there we go, these 3 nuts. We're going to take these out of the bag here. I'm not going to edit this portion, guys, because I'm sure you want to see as much as possible. So we're going to do this again, being very careful. Also, these push pins are extremely sensitive. They're spring-loaded. Do not push on them if you don't have to. I had one of these actually pop off when I took it out of the bag, and thankfully I was able to find the extremely small spring inside and put it back together. Just Murphy's Law. Just be very careful. All right. Get these nuts started on the mounting screws. Okay. And then we're just going to tighten them. And now what we're going to do is just going to snug these up. They don't need to be Gorilla tight. A small adjustable wrench will work just fine. Just be careful not to short any of the pins out and just snug them up. Don't Gorilla tight them, otherwise you'll run into other issues. Now that that's all tightened up, you're then going to use in the kit, once we put this piece over it, all right, and what we're going to do is we're just going to use our finger, we're going to hold it up against it. You're going to see it's spring-loaded a little bit. You're going to see that these little plastic nuts here, we're going to then put them on the 3 screws like this. And these don't have to be Gorilla tight either. They are just there to hold the 2 PCBs together, sandwiched through the chassis vents of the unit. So maybe the most difficult part right here. Not even going to use the pliers on these. Just need to be snug enough to where they'll hold the contact, and again, the spring loaded to sandwich the 2 pieces together. Now the 2Seemy is mounted. Now that the 2Seemy is installed on the chassis, we have to take this ribbon cable or Molex connector, and what we're going to do is we're going to connect it to the left connector here if you're looking at the machine from the front. This connector right here is now going to feed the smaller screen that the D3200 comes with, and we can reconnect all the other ribbon cables to get this reassembled. We're going to take the control surface here, carefully put this back in. There are 3 hinges that we want it to rest on. Once it's in place, it might take a try or 2 before it all lines up. Now we're going to go and connect all these back together. I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera. Let's see if I can try to manipulate it here a little bit. You guys can see what I'm doing, hopefully. All right, so this one goes here. Gentle but firm pressure to push these back in. Make sure they're all the way seated correctly. And then here's this ribbon cable that was for the screen. This is the tricky part. I apologize if you can't see it too well. Carefully line up the pins. Once it's in there, There's the click. Double checking. And as you can see, I can't lift this control surface any higher than where it is now without fear of pulling on these cords, which is not what we want. But I'm just doing a quick idiot check to make sure I connected everything properly. That's in there. Third, fourth, and then now we have a fifth for this screen and the 2Seemy. Okay. Bring this down very easily. Cool. Now, let's give it a try. Make sure everything works properly, and then we'll button it up with the screws. All right, I've just got these side rails in, which will lock the control surface to the chassis, and I should be able to power it up now, and then just for Murphy's Law's sake, I'll keep the front screws and the back screws off once I know for sure that everything's working, and we can put them back in once we've tested it. Everything seems to be hooked up properly, and this is the screen. It's a very old Dell 19-inch screen. Let's go widescreen here. I'm going to power this up. The standby light comes on. Let's see how this works. It's working. All right. That's way better than this little itsy tiny screen here, which doesn't look to be working properly. Looks like we're gonna have to check that out. All right, false alarm. I had to go back into the unit and reseat the connector for this smaller screen, and now it is working perfectly. As you can probably tell just by the look of how small this is, and it does have a little bit of a phase issue going on with this camera because of the frame rate, but suffice to say, your eyes would definitely get tired looking at this screen for a long time versus a nice big screen here, and you can check out how you can go through the different menus. It makes things so much better. Very grateful for that. So on the back here, I haven't tightened these all the way up, but as you can see here on the camera, there's 1, 2, and 3. And the one right next to the 2Seemy is a little bit tough to get to, but it's right on the side. So there's 3 screws, machine screws that go there. And then I mentioned the 4 that will go on the front here. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna put them in place. I don't want to tighten them. And I know this because I've done this before. You have to get all the screws in loose, and then you tighten everything up. The side rails are only in there snug, not tightened down, just so everything lines up. Sorry for the bad camera angle, guys, but I will get that fixed just momentarily. It is difficult sometimes to get all the angles correct. You can see that one right there. It's one of the more tricky ones to get to. Just get them started. And then we need to get the other 4 that go up in the front here, and that ought to complete this job and then tighten everything together. All right, everything's put back together. Let's do one more test for Murphy's Law's sake, and I'm going to call this project done. Everything's back together. Here's the final test. Beautiful. Takes a few seconds to boot up. And there you go. Final test is I'm just going to make sure that it plays on the output here. I have it hooked up to my Mackie Big Knob, which is going to go to these small speakers for right now. I don't have the Mackie MR5s on, but I always run this from the monitor outs unbalanced, because they are unbalanced outputs, to a direct box passive that converts it to a balanced signal. I can isolate any kind of ground loops. And the cool thing is, when I got this unit, the person who owned it before me still had his work on here. I don't think I ever reached out to him to ask him if he wanted to have it transferred back to him at all. But if you recognize this and you are the original owner, please let me know. I never deleted it. I always figured that it was great to be able to showcase what this unit was capable of. And plus, this one track is sounds pretty cool. Take a listen. Hopefully I won't get blocked.
I'm walking, yes indeed, and I'm talking, baby, about you.
Nice and clear.
I'm hoping you come back to me,
The frame rate of the original screen was faster than the frame rate on the 2Seemy, and I believe that was a side effect of the process of making the screen bigger. The frame rate is about half on the output of the 2Seemy versus the original. The way that it's done, I guess they use some sort of pixel doubler to make it bigger. But what I can demonstrate what that means. Watch the peaks.
and I'm lonely.
See how they're nice and smooth and they're falling down, up and down very easily. If you look at the same one here, it's a little bit more choppy. Not a big deal though. I guess if you really wanted to go and check to see if those peaks are falling where they need to fall, there you go. Nice tune. So here I have both my units, and the one that we just installed, as you can see, does not have the PS2 port here. However, the one over my original unit, and this one I bought brand new 2005, 2006, and when it came out, I believe 2010, this had the PS2 mouse port. And it works great to this day. Obviously this PS2 does not work, but this goes to show you that I was one of the early adopters. I still have this unit and it works great to this day. If anyone is interested, I do have a CD image copy of the recovery CD, and I did make one myself. I even wrote Time to Panic on it, but if you need a copy of this, let me know. I do also have the FSC 502, which is the equivalent of the Korg PS-1. It's just a momentary foot switch. You can pick these up pretty inexpensively. Korg still makes them. The PS1 specifically goes for about $40 on Reverb. Probably the harder one to find, and this is something that not a lot of people would use for it, but I have it just the same, is the EXP-2, which is designed to control some of the effects parameters. You'll need a tip ring sleeve to tip ring sleeve connected to output number 2, and it would go to the expression pedal input here on the back of the unit. But, you know, for sake of having it, I have it. Can't say I've really used it much, but I have it. I also have this MIDI 5-foot cord where you can actually daisy chain these two. So one becomes the master, one becomes the slave, and you can basically control both units together as one large desk console, and you can have easily up to 24 tracks of recording audio. That's the cool thing about these units, is that you had the ability to expand upon their capabilities. And even today, that's still very valuable. And I think that's also the reason why these units still have a lot of value and are still selling on Reverb today. And the 2Seemy only adds more to that value. Well guys, I'm going to end the video here. I do appreciate all the support on the channel. If there's any questions on the install, and I would love to hear back from people that actually are still using these units to this day. Here we are in 2023, and I'm still using mine. Hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Please leave a like, and any questions, please leave a comment below. Thanks again. Take care.